Bhakti Yoga and Qualifications of Seeker. I read it as Speaker, and I was like, huh?
Yeah. Okay, so let's start. I think we have everybody in. So let's start with the prayer. Om Asatoma Sadgamaya Tamasoma Jyotirgamaya Mrityorma Tamgamaya. Om
Shanti,
Lead us from unreal to real, lead us from the darkness to light, lead us from death to immortality. Om, peace, peace, peace. Okay, so Manu, take over for this slide, please.
Okay. Can you show the second part also?
Yeah, sure. Everything?
Yeah, all. Okay. So I'm just going to go through brief overview of what we did for the very first class. Starting with why Vedanta, and then I'll share a bit about why I got interested in this. So I think the main reason we're all really here to learn about Vedanta is it's sort of like Hindu philosophy's answer to some of the most basic questions we all have in life. Going from the most practical ones like what does it mean to be a good person? How can I be more happy? Um, what is the right thing to do in each circumstance? And then all the way across the spectrum to the most philosophical, most abstract questions like what is God? What is the universe? What is the nature of reality? And I think for me, I first got really interested in this because a lot of what I was seeing from Westerners who started being interested in Advaita and Buddhism, and they have put a lot of like monks and people who've done like 10,000, 30,000 hours of meditation in a scanner and tried to look at how like what changes in the brain over time. And some of the things they are finding actually align quite nicely with what's being talked about in Hinduism. And so that's how I got interested in this, is that how did these guys 30,000 years ago figure out all this stuff that we are now realizing with MRI scanners, and what else did they know at that time? Okay, so going into I think I'll just cover like the main stuff on the second part of the slide, and then probably some of the others will get covered also. So how do we study Vedanta, which is like the end of the Vedas, the Upanishads? So there's three parts to it: Shravanam, Mananam, and Nididhyasam. So Shravanam is sort of the learning that we're all used to. It's like university style, didactic style, where the teacher just is your instructor and you as the student are the sponge, and you're just supposed to like retain everything and be very familiar with this whatever's being taught to you, and be able to recite it back even if you don't fully understand what you're saying, but at least you know the lay of the land very well, right? And that's like many years of instruction that goes there. Then Mananam is the next part, where now you see everything. Now you go and like loose all the arrows of questions that you've had and go and really break down the weak parts that you don't understand in the logic, and you resolve all the questions that you have at this point. So then from those two you move to Nididhyasam, which is now you have that intellectual understanding. And how do you move from that to a full realization, like an understanding in your heart that, okay, I fully realize what's being talked about. And I think that's a bit like gravity, right? Where you just know it, you understand it. It's the baseline assumption. You don't think that, oh, things are going to float around. You just know it, it's true. Okay, then the Vedas also talk about our goals in life. So it's sort of like broken down into the level 1 goals, which is the prayers, and then the actual ultimate goal, which is Shreyas, or the, what was that? Param Purushartha as well, or that's Moksha. So the first three goals are your Artha, Kama, and Punyam. So Artha is all the physical stuff. So your Roti Kapra Makan, your status, physical stuff. Kama is your sense pleasures, your desires, entertainment, all of that. And punyam is the good deeds that you do in this life to work towards betterment of your next life. So your spiritual brownie points for your reincarnation. And but all of those three goals, right? They're your everyday life things that you go through, but they're associated with a lot of striving, a lot of action. There's suffering and discontent associated with them. You have to work very hard to preserve what you have. But what Vedas talk about, your actual goal, moksha, is like the next level, which is actually inner freedom from striving towards those first three goals. So that means that you reach a state of inner equanimity, inner contentment, where if you get, the things associated with those three, that's fine, that's all good. If you suffer some misfortunes, reversals in life, you don't fall into a deep depression that, oh, everything I strive towards didn't happen. And so moksha is supposed to align with the true nature of reality, which is that you are that awareness that is observing everything. You're not the thing that is affected by, the attraction or the repulsion towards good or bad things, outcomes. So that's moksha. And then the last part that we talked about was the paths to get to moksha. So there's within Advaita, there's the three paths: karma, upasana, and jnana. So karma yoga is doing the right action with the right attitude. I guess this is the stuff that Krishna was talking about in the Gita. So he says stuff like, you have the adhikar towards the work itself, but not the fruits of your labor, right? So I think a good way Shri Uncle was talking about last time to get into that very process rather than result driven mind state is you think of everything that you're doing, whether it's a small like administrative thing or like bigger things, your whole career, your outlook on life, whatever. You think of it as action that you're doing for God. So you strive to excellence in everything that you do. But then also you receive whatever the outcome is as a prasad, as like a blessing. So that means whether you got what you wanted or you didn't get what you wanted, it doesn't affect your balance. It doesn't affect the effort that you put into it. You know that you did your best, right? And that makes you move towards things like the flow state, where you're really in the zone, you're really focused, and you're not so, burdened by how is this going to work out in the end. Then Upasana Yoga is all the disciplines. So the point there is that we have a lot of energy, a lot of power from our desires. And what you want to do is really focus these and harness that energy and move it towards, moksha or more spiritual things, move it in the right direction. And so channelize that energy rather than it just, being diffuse and scattered in your everyday ups and downs. And then lastly is Gyan Yoga. So to get to Gyan Yoga, to understand what's being talked about, you have to have done quite a bit of work on the Karma and Upasana side first. And Gyan Yoga is where you really start to answer those questions of what am I, what is God, that kind of thing. And another interesting point was that within Vedanta, there's the three different interpretations. So there's the more dualistic view, which is there's me and then there's God, and that's two separate things. That's Dvaita. Then there's the sort of one hand in both pies, the, what's it called? Vishishta Dvaita, yeah, which is there's a part of me that's also a part of God. And then the last one that we're looking at is Advaita, non-dual, which is that it's the same thing. Atma and Brahma is the same thing. And you are, whatever's there in God is in you as well. And you just need to like get to that realization.
Very good.
Yep.
Thank you, Manu. I think that was a very good recall of what we've learned. What I'm going to do is take from there. We talked about the problem of ignorance, right? We said we don't know who we are, and that is the fundamental problem. And the solution to that problem is actually knowledge, and that is only through Jnana Yoga. Unfocused mind, you need a focused mind in order for you to get that knowledge, and the way to get focus is through Upasana Yoga. And in order for you to get that focus, you need a pure mind. and the purification of your mind is what is karma yoga, right? And the technical terms we said was ajnana and jnana, vikshapa and ekakarta, chittamala and chittasuddhi. So what is the journey? I think Manu summarized it very well. Karma yoga is proper action with proper attitude. And we talked about what is proper action, the action that benefits a bigger group of people, sattvic action. And proper attitude is Ishwararpanam and Prashada Buddhi, which is the acceptance of whatever result comes and the best effort to whatever you do. Upasana yoga is all about disciplining and integrating your personality through physical discipline, verbal discipline, sensory discipline, and mental discipline. And we saw how we do this and what can we do. And through the two yogas, we become refined and disciplined. What happens when we do this is we start basically questioning our artha, kama, and dharma goals. They become kind of meaningless. We start searching for a purpose in life, and that turns us towards seeking freedom, right? Freedom is something that we are innately born with, not just us. Any animals, you put the birds in the cage and you open it, they just want to fly out. Even your children, they're holding your finger. The moment they're able to stand by themselves, they want to run away, right? So it's all an innate nature of ours to seek freedom. And we think that by acquiring something, we'll get a little bit more freedom and we'll get this. And if you look back in your life, uh, you know, one of my uncles told me when I said, I don't want to get married now, I need to finish this, and this. He said, listen, if you talk about constraints, you will have constraints every time, all the time. It's only the nature of constraint that changes, right? Similarly, if we search for freedom in the outside world, with external things, you will always be dependent on something. So our true nature is to seek freedom from external dependencies. That's what we want to do. And the scriptures say, seek within, right? You're searching in the wrong place. Uh, in India, we have these temple festivals where they take the god statue into the pond, and one such festival is going on. And after the festival was done, this guy was walking back and he saw another lake, another pond, in which one guy was, just walking around. So he asked him what happened. He said, I lost my diamond ring in the lake and I'm searching for it. So this guy, being helpful, he gets into the lake, and then 5 more people see, 6 more, 10 more. Then finally 20 people are searching. And then one guy asks him, where exactly did you lose it? And he says, I lost it in that pond where they were, bathing the god. So then why are you searching here? He said, that pond was too crowded, so I'm searching here. So if you search at the wrong place, you will never find what you want. So the thing is to seek within. How can we seek within? Uh, uh, Security and happiness is you. And if you realize that that's your true nature, then you don't have to search anymore. Stop looking outside and ask, who am I? Who am I is the question. If you understand the answer to that, if you've heard of Ramana Maharishi, he's a very recent saint. He used to live in Annamalai, in the Annamalai temple, Tiruvannamalai, in Tamil Nadu. He wrote a book called Nanya, which is Who Am I? So he basically just focused on that, and he got the answer of Advaita through asking that question. So how do we get this knowledge, right? The means of knowledge for us is all our 5 senses, right? When we see things, when we feel things, when we taste, when we hear, these are the things that help us to get knowledge. Primary source of knowledge is what is called pramanam, right? Pramanam is your 5 senses or your pramanam. And then you have primary and secondary pramanam. Primary pramanam is direct perception. When you've seen something, when you've heard something, that is one way of acquiring knowledge. The second way of acquiring knowledge is inference, right? When you've seen this, and then you infer that this is what it is. That's called this secondary pramanam. Um, so Vedanta is supposed to be the 6th pramanam. 6th pramanam being It's called Shastra Pramanam, which is helping you to understand that cannot be experienced by your five senses and your inference. Then the question is, Vedas is just words. How do I get a perception of something by just hearing words? It's like if I read about Himalayas and it's not the same as going there and experiencing. How do I know what it is just by words? Uh, can words give you direct knowledge? And one of the things about Advaita is it is not something that you just learn, it is something that you perceive. So how can you perceive something through words? And so there's an interesting way of looking at this. For example, let's say I go for a walk every day, and then I meet this old man who's sitting in the park. I get talking to him. Every day I meet him. I spend some time with him, and then I travel to some other city, and I run into my old schoolmate, and I start talking to him. And he says, "Where do you live?" And I say, "I live in San Jose." He says, "Oh, my dad lives in San Jose as well." I said, "Oh, really?" And then he says, "Oh," and then you get talking, and you realize the old man who you've been talking to every day is actually your friend's dad. So that's a good example of what you can what you've already experienced. When you hear words, you are able to realize it. You are able to get a direct perception of what that is. So that's how Atma is. When you seek within, you already experienced it. So Vedas just give you a way to understand it, right? So that's why Shravanam, Mananam, Nididhyasanam makes it possible for you to realize who you are. Of course, this is supposed to be done with the guidance of a competent guru. As I mentioned in the first class, I'm just introducing the subject. Don't take me as the guru. You have to find somebody from whom you can learn, because there is a lot of technical terms, a lot of contradictory things that you'll read when you read the scriptures or when you hear about it. We'll cover a little bit when we go further why that is so, right? But it's important that we have somebody to guide you, somebody who has experienced it or at least understood it to lead you there. So we'll get to the topics of today. It's almost 20 minutes since we started, but I'm going to cover two subjects today. One is Bhakti Yoga. We heard of Karma Yoga, Upasana Yoga, and Jnana Yoga. Is Bhakti Yoga a fourth type of yoga? And Bhakti for whom? Bhakti means devotion, love. Love for whom? So we'll try to define those two. And then we'll talk about what is the qualifications that you need in order for you to be ready to get knowledge. We talked about it in the first session. I really rushed through it at that time. We'll spend a little bit more time today to understand it better. So is Bhakti Yoga a fourth path? There are different interpretations of this, right? In Bhagavad Gita, Krishna does spend a lot of time about talking about bhakti and devotion. Some people say that Bhakti Yoga is a different path. You can actually take that path directly to get moksha. There are saints who have done that, right? Who Meera or Tulsi Das or people like that who basically spent a lot of time in devoting their time and attention to a personal God, and they did find some peace in that. And we'll see what bhakti is and so on and so forth. But as far as Advaita Vedanta is concerned, Bhakti Yoga is intertwined with the other three yogas. It's not a separate yoga. It's not a direct path to moksha. Your path to moksha is only through knowledge, and that knowledge, in order for you to get it, you need bhakti to be part of it. And we'll see that in the next few sections. So bhakti means devotion, a reverential feeling of love with reverence, love of God. This is the first definition of bhakti. Love towards a higher principle, right? What is love? Love is, according to science, love is nothing but a lot of good chemicals, happy chemicals that are squirted in your brain. dopamine, oxytocin, and serotonin. Basically, these are different chemicals that make you feel happy. So dopamine signals that our need is about to be met. Uh, Oxytocin is basically by hugging, touching, social trust, building that social trust. Serotonin is the status aspect of love, that admiration that comes with it. And so when you do all this to a power like God, who you think about, it gives you true love. It gives you true happiness, right? The second definition of love is course of discipline, and this is what we talked about: karma yoga, upasana yoga, and jnana yoga. Karma yoga, we talked about it. We said Ishwara Arpanam Prasada Buddhi. What does it mean? You're already assuming that there is some higher principle, God, whatever you want to call it, and that's what prompts you to do certain things. Similarly, when you are doing upasana yoga, when you're trying to discipline your mind, you're again meditating on the Lord, and therefore it again references to this higher principle of God. And Jnana Yoga, as we said, is nothing but self-discovery, and self-discovery is nothing but God discovery. So if you really look at it, all of these are intertwined with devotion or bhakti. And that's why you need, I thought I'll spend some time talking about bhakti. Two reasons. One, because of this misconception that bhakti yoga is a separate yoga. I thought I better cover it, because somewhere you'll hear and say, hey, we only talked about three. What is the fourth one, right? Now, when you look at love, there are three directions or three levels of love, if you want to speak about it. First one is I, I, I have this goal and I love this goal. I want that, right? This is love of your goal. Now, it could be some excellence that I want to achieve. Say, for example, I'm a singer, and I really want to be a very popular and very famous singer, and that is my goal, and I love that goal. But in order to get there, there is a means of reaching that, right? I have to practice, I have to learn. So I start loving that, because I know by loving that I will attain my goal, which is actually what I love. So this is called the means love. The means love is called Manda Bhakti. Manda Bhakti means the lowest form of Bhakti. Madhyama Bhakti is the medium form of Bhakti. And the last, why am I doing this? Because I want to be famous. It's all about me. So the self-love is the ultimate Bhakti, which is Uttama Bhakti, right? So this is the gradation in terms of the love that we see. And Vedanta, in fact, Upanishad says nobody loves the spouse for the spouse's sake. Everyone loves the spouse for one's own sake. Right? So when we say we love somebody, it's not that we love that person, it's that we love that person for us, right? So it's always about us, ultimately, is what Upanishad says. So let's look at the three grades of love. Devotion, God as a means. A lot of it, the first beginning of love of God starts with, I need this, I need to pass my exam, let me go pray to God, right? That's what is means love, right? That is the lowest form of love. Then we say God is going to give me peace, so let me love God for his own sake. I love God because I want to reach God. I want him to bring me peace. He is peace, therefore he is an end in itself, and therefore I love. So that's your end love. And then God as yourself. When you say the Lord and the self are identical, that's self-love, right? That's really the three grades of devotion that you see. So when we kept talking about God, so what is this object of devotion that we are talking about? What is God? God in can be defined in three ways. In Vedanta, there are three definitions of God, and these three definitions are based on the maturity and the intellectual caliber of the seeker. Right? Again, it's an interesting concept, right? So if you really look at the branches of Hinduism, the schools of Hinduism, there are schools which are totally atheistic. there are schools which believe in one type of God, and there are schools which believe in multiple gods. There are schools which believe in everything being God, etc. Right? And each of those is appeals to a certain maturity level and certain intellectual caliber that the seeker has. The first definition is, oh, we all live in this place. This place is so well designed. It's got laws. So some intelligent being should have created this world, this universe. And he must be all powerful because he's making everything run like clockwork. Every morning the sun rises, every evening the moon comes up, the rain falls, everything is doing what it's supposed to do. And so this guy must be all powerful, and he is the person who has created the universe, or Jagat Karta Ishvara. Jagat Karta is the Jagat is the world, including ourselves and our mind. And that is one way of thinking about it. And this God, very safely we put him somewhere in heaven, up in the sky. We can't see him. We can only see him or her after we die, right? So that's kind of what the first definition of God is. This is seen as a personal God. We look at him in our form, Krishna, Rama, Vishnu, Shiva, Shakti, etc. So this is what we call God with a specific form. And when you talk about devotion, people have had visions of this God. So Meera saw Krishna, or when Tulsidas, you may have heard that story, when Tulsidas was a poor man, but a lot of rich people used to come and see him. So two thieves thought that, there are a lot of rich people coming, they must be giving him gifts, therefore, there must be something there to steal. The middle of the night, they come and they see Rama and Lakshmana walking and guarding Tulsidas' residence. And so these guys run away, but they come the next day and talk to him and say, who are those people who are walking? And then Tulsidas realizes that it's Ram and Lakshman who've been guarding him. And then he decides to, he says, you guys came to take this, you can take everything, I don't need this, right? So when you believe in this God, there are incidences of people getting these visions. Does that mean they really exist, or is it an act of your brain? Who knows, right? But that is a God which we call Eka Rupa Ishvara, right? Eka Rupa, one Rupa Ishvara. That is one type of God. That is the lowest level of God. That's for the beginner. I don't mean lowest level of God. I mean for the lowest maturity level of people and intellectual capability. The second definition of God is the cause of the world. So when you say God created world, then the question is, okay, if he created world, what material did he use to create the world? Then you say, no, he is the world. So that's called Jagat Karana Ishvara. He's the reason, he's the cause of the world. It's like in Vedanta, they talk about the spider's web, how the spider builds the web. It doesn't need external material. It squirts out the web and builds it by itself. So God becomes the material. He is the world. So everywhere, whatever you see in the universe is caused by him. And he is a universal God. Everything in this world is God. In one of the definitions, they say that monoistic religions talk about one God. In Hinduism, we say there is only God, right? And this is one way of saying that everything in the universe is God itself, God himself or herself, and that is called Aneka Rupa Ishvara. So that is, everything is God, all of it is God. The third definition of God is arises out of the question that if everything is God, there's so much evil in the world, there is so many dangers in the world, is that also God? Then you go into the thing to say it's not actually God, it is God who's appearing as the world. He's the substratum, right? It's like if you if there is a person who's never seen a movie and you describe to him, oh, there's a screen and then they show this movie and you can see all these things coming up, and you say, come, I will show you the movie. You take him to the theater and the movie has already started. So he comes and sits down, he starts seeing the movie. Let's say it's a Ramayana movie and you see Rama and Ravana fighting or whatever. And this guy asks, you said there'll be a white thing. I can't see that white thing. Where is that? He said, no, it's behind. He said, so should I go behind Ravana to see that? No. So it's very difficult for him to understand what that white screen is, because he's seeing the movie, and he's seeing all these elephants and monkeys and everything running there, and he can't figure out that there's a screen behind it. So it's almost like that. It's like God being the substratum and everything being manifested in that, and that we call the formless God, or Arupa Ishvara. Right. So this is the three kind of levels of understanding of God. So you can to summarize, uh, uh, and they kind of put it in a way that Arupa Ishvara actually includes the other two forms, Ekarupa and Anekarupa, somewhat like, the Einsteinian physics containing Newtonian physics, but applicable to certain conditions, right? So to summarize Bhakti, there are three ways of looking at Bhakti. One is Bhavana Drishtya, or it's how do you love God, Manda, Madhyama, and Uttama. Sadhana Drishtya, which is how do you do stuff, which is Karma Rupa, Upasana Rupa, and Jnana Rupa. And Devata Drishtya, which is Ekarupa, Anekarupa, and Arupa. So love, spiritual discipline, and understanding of God, right? So this is Bhakti. And as I mentioned right at the beginning, Bhakti is very much entwined in the journey. As you can see, the disciplines themselves are spiritual disciplines. And therefore, that is what we mean by Bhakti, right? So it's something I wanted to cover, because I don't want it to come up later to say, what is Bhakti, where is it? I thought, let me cover it. The second thing we wanted to learn today was qualification for pursuing Jnana Yoga. And we talked about it. I don't know how many of you remember. We talked about the 4 Ds, right? We said discrimination is the first D. And discrimination typically has taken on a negative connotation in today's world, where you say you're discriminating somebody for being a woman or being gay or whatever reason. But that's not what we mean by discrimination here. What we mean by discrimination is viveka. Viveka means ability to differentiate. Differentiate what? Ability to differentiate permanent and impermanent things, right? What did we start with? Our moksha goal meant that I want permanent happiness. How can I get permanent happiness if I am getting it out of impermanent things? And if you look at the world, everything is impermanent. The sun is impermanent, right? Maybe it lives for billions of years, but at some point it's going to die. The earth is impermanent. Everything is impermanent. So how do you derive permanent happiness from impermanent things? It's just the length of permanency differs, but everything is impermanent. The only thing that is permanent is Brahman. And at least that's what Vedanta says. And unless you are able to differentiate, they call it Nitya Anitya. Nitya means permanent, Anitya means impermanent. Viveka is Viveka of Anitya and Nitya. As long as you are able to discriminate what is permanent and what is impermanent, that is your first qualification. You have to get that ability to differentiate between permanent and impermanent. The second is called dispassion. Dispassion or vairagya. This is absence of addiction to sensory pleasures. Sensory pleasures can be ethical and moral sensory pleasures, like, anything, love of anything, right? I like to read books, good books. Yeah, it's a pleasure that I get by reading books. It's an ethical sensory pleasure, or it could be unethical and immoral sensory pleasures. But either way, you want that addiction to be not there. You want that absence of addiction, and that is the second qualification. The third one is discipline, and if you recall the first session, there's like 6 or 7 characteristics of that. 6, in fact. We'll see those 6 in the next slide, and I'll cover the last one, which is desire. So the 4 Ds are desire for mumukshutvam. Mumukshutvam means what? Mumukshutvam means that desire to attain moksha, to free yourself of external dependencies. And you need that intense desire for you to progress towards it. So these are the four things: discrimination, dispassion, discipline, and desire. So let's get into discipline. What is discipline? The first one is mastery over mind, sama, which is how am I able to regulate and channel and direct our thoughts with a calm and focused mind and tranquility, equanimity, as Manu talked about in the beginning. Second is dhamma, which is mastery over sense organs, right? Um, uh, External sense organs. We talked about it when we talked about Upasana Yoga, how our vasanas, which we are born with, uh, dictate certain thoughts to arise, and those thoughts translate into actions. But if we can delay, if we say no admission without permission, if we have that ability to slow down, and the moment the thought arises, I'm able to say, okay, no, I don't want to entertain this thought. That is your ability to control your external sense organs. The third is uparama, which is capacity to withdraw. Uh, that is avoiding things which are going to disturb your mind. It's kind of building a little bit of asceticism or ability to withdraw from dependencies, right? It's kind of doing things which are Vedanta friendly rather than doing things which are going to disturb your peace of mind. The fourth one is titiksha. Titiksha is forbearance. Forbearance is, we all know life is not a bed of roses. We are going to find some difficulties at some point. So Buddhists talk about, two arrows. You always get hurt with two arrows. The first arrow is the external event. So, for example, somebody was supposed to give you something, they didn't give you. That's the first arrow. The second arrow is, how do I react to that? Somebody didn't give me that. So do I feel disappointed? Do I feel angry? Do I feel that he ditched me? How do I feel about it? That's your second arrow. And that is totally in your control. Am I able to control that? Because first arrow, nobody can control, right? I hurt myself. Yeah. But I can, be dying. I can feel victimized. Why me? That's your second arrow, right? So how do I, forbearance gives you that ability to soften the second arrow, to remove that second arrow. And you can remove it in multiple ways. You can find a solution. You can say, okay, it's too hot. Maybe I switch on the fan. But all of those solutions are short-term solutions, which will help you for some time, but you will get back. So how do you do that? Second is, I just explode. I don't like it and I explode, right? I feel offended. Why would I feel offended? Because that's the second arrow, and I explode at people, right? In some sense, like if your boss is mean to you, you can't explode, so you start suppressing, right? So these are the ways we use to handle difficult situations. But the Vedanta says your best way of doing this is elevating your tolerance, ability to tolerate a lot of these things, and avoiding that second arrow is the best way for you to do it. And that is called tiksha. How do I develop that attitude of forbearance, being able to pursue things despite setbacks, not getting, even if somebody pushes you down, you're able to get up and walk again, right? So that is tiksha. The fifth one is Shraddha. Shraddha means faith or trust. What this means is, in US, in America, religion is called faith. Okay, but that's a different faith. That is unquestioning faith. What we're talking about here is the trust that Vedas have the answer, Vedanta has the answer, and my guru will lead me to that, and therefore I will question, I will understand, but I know that that is there, right? So um, it's like if you're attending college, and the professor comes and writes E equal to MC squared, and he goes 1 hour explaining why E equal to MC squared. At the end of it, he asks, "Do you understand?" He says, You say, no, I don't understand, but you're a great guy, I know, and I trust you, so E must be equal to MC squared. That's not what he wants. What he wants is that you trust that what he's saying is true, but you understand that. So that is what is Shraddha, right? Shraddha is that I understand from believing that what it's saying is true, but I have to figure it out myself. The last one is Samadhanam, which is concentration, focusing capacity. If you don't know, focusing, not just focusing on how you do things, but also where you want to go. Right? In Alice in Wonderland, Alice goes to Cheshire Cat and says, where do I go? Which path do I take? And he says, if you don't know where you want to go, anyway will take you. Right? So you need to have that focus to say, I want that. And what is that? That is moksha, an ability to do that. Right? So, and if you think back, all of these disciplines, how do you get this? And you get this through karma yoga and upasana yoga. Right? Those are the two things that help you to acquire these qualifications. So discrimination, dispassion, discipline, and desire, it's called sadhana chatushtayam. 4 sadhanas that I need to do in order for me to be qualified for Jnana Yoga. So once you do this, now you're called a sadhana chatushtaya sampatti. Spelling mistake there. But that's what you are, right? And you are an adhikari. Now you are ready to learn Jnana Yoga. So the next question then is, so what is this great knowledge that we are going to talk about? What is self-knowledge? So I'm going to spend, this is kind of a trailer to what's going to come, right? So I will introduce the concept here. So obviously this is just the introduction. We will be going deeper and deeper into this. What is self-knowledge? It says Atma Satyam Tadanya Sarva Mithya. What does that mean? It means Atma is Satyam, all else is Mithya. In this translation, I basically kept 3 words, right? Atma, Satyam, and Mithya. So we need to understand this. There is no equivalent English word for it. It's a phrase. It's somewhat I need to go a little deeper to explain what it is. But this statement is also said in multiple different ways. It says Atma Satyam Jagat Mithya, means Jagat is everything else, and that is all Mithya. Atma is Satya, or they say Brahman Satya, and Jagat Mithya, which means Brahman is real, and Jagat is Mithya. That's not real, Satyam. I'll tell you what Satyam is and what Mithya is. So Atma and Brahma is almost the same, and we will go through that. So Atma is, in every being, there is a inner essence, invisible, immortal inner essence of every being. You can see it, you feel it, and you assume, everybody else has it because they behave exactly like you. You have no way of knowing whether they have that inner essence or not. But we intuitively know that everybody has an inner essence within them, and that is invisible and that is immortal. That's the definition of Atma. Atma is invisible, it's immortal, and it's the inner essence of every being. So what is Satyam and what is Satyam and what is Mithya? Now I'm sitting at a table, right? A wooden table, let's say. The table has weight. It feels like solid. I can keep my computer on it. I can rest my hand on it. It's there, right? You can see it if you're here. I can see it in front of me. So, but when you look at it closely, there is a surprising fact that comes through, which that there is no substance called table, right? You say, no, but I can see it, I can feel it, I can do everything, right? But if I tell you, leave the table there, but give me all the wood that goes into the table, will you be able to do that? You can't, right? Because table is made from wood. And if I tell you to keep the table, but give me all the wood, you won't have anything with you, right? And same thing with any kind of wooden furniture, any wooden article that you think about. If you take away the wood, there is nothing left. So table is what we call name and form. All these things that we see in this picture is all names and forms. Nama Rupa, right? The substance is wood, right? So that's what we mean by something that exists independently is called Satyam, and something that cannot exist without that substance is called Mithya. Right? In Vedanta, when you go and listen to Vedanta lectures, you'll hear multiple examples like clay and the pot, right? Without the clay, there is no pot. When the pot is destroyed, clay still remains. So the substance is clay, and the nama rupa is pot or jar or whatever that you create from that clay. Similarly, they talk about gold and ornaments. A bangle is only a name and form. There is really nothing called. There is no substance called bangle. It's gold bangle. If you remove the gold, there is no substance. There is no bangle or a ring or a necklace, right? All of these are names and forms of the real substance, which is gold. Similarly, here in the case of wooden furniture, you have all these different things, which is wood, but ultimately the substance is wood, and without it, these nama rupa cannot exist. So when we say Satyam, we mean that is the true substance. Everything else that we see, everything that we see in the universe is dependent on the existence of Atma, right? So what does it mean? It means that if Atma did not exist, everything else cannot exist. Everything else is just a name and form. And that's really the self-knowledge that we're going to learn. And when such an abstract thing, we talked about pramanams, right? All these, I have to see, I have to read, I have to feel, or I have to taste, or I have to smell for me to know. How do I even describe Atma? So Atma is what they call aprameya, which means it is beyond pramanams. It is not anything that you can do with your senses. So and language has limitations. In fact, when quantum physics was coming about, there were lots of terms that they had to invent, because these are kind of behaviors that we don't see in the normal world, and therefore we never had a word for those. The language didn't exist, so they created something called spin. It's got nothing to do with the spin that we do, but it's some property that they wanted to name spin, right? Because they couldn't find any language. So similarly, language has certain limitations. It is not possible for language to describe Atma. In fact, I thought it's very interesting when I saw this lecture on Adi Shankara. We talked about Adi Shankara. Advaita is his philosophy. He was living, 1400 years ago, and 1400 years ago, as a 16-year-old, he defined what language is. He said, language can only deal with if one of these properties exists. That means it should have a class or species. So jati, right? Like a cow. Cow is a species. It has certain characteristics, and therefore I can talk about it. Guna is quality. If I don't have, and Atma or Brahman is not a class or species, because there is only one. So language cannot describe it. Similarly, it's a nirguna Brahma. That means it has no qualities. So again, language is unable to be used to describe it. The third is kriya, function, like a driver or a president or a engineer, whatever it is, right? Something that you do, some function that you perform. Atma doesn't perform any functions, and therefore you can't use language to describe it. Or you should have a sambandha, like father, son, or mother, daughter, whatever it is, right? And it cannot have a relationship because it is the only satyam, and therefore there is no second, and therefore you can't talk about it. The last is Ruddhi. Ruddhi is convention. Convention meaning I'm called Shri because that's a convention. Somebody named me Shri Kumar and everybody calls me Shri. But in order for that convention to come, I need to point at something. I had to say, this is Shri Kumar. You can't say that with Atma. So none of these are possible with Atma. And therefore, how do you talk about it? How do we talk about Atma? And that's why I said you need a guru, because in Vedanta, they use multiple ways to kind of refer to it. So you intuitively understand what Atma is. First one is using negatives. They say nayati, nayati, which means not this, not this. They basically explain it saying Brahma, if Brahma doesn't exist, is not true, not that. Brahma is not an object. Brahman is not an object. So not this either. Or they use implied meaning. When they say Tattvam Asi, that means you're saying you are God. Like God is all powerful. He's everywhere. He's all over the place. I am in this place. How is that? They are actually talking about the Atma. So it's an implied. It's like if I say I just ate a lovely mango. Uh, you won't assume I ate the seed and the skin and everything, right? Because it's implied. I only eat the edible part of the mango. So that's called implied meaning, right? So when I say I eat mango, you have some reference and you are able to understand that. Then they use paradoxes, right? They say wise men see inaction, action in inaction, and inaction in action. So if you don't have a guru to explain this, you'll say, it sounds very esoteric, but makes no sense, right? So the last one is called it's like using something. You use something to refer something. So, for example, if you're walking along the road and you ask, "Hey, which floor are you living in? Which house is yours?" And you say, "You see that crow sitting there, and that is my house." The crow flies away, but you still know, okay, because the crow is sitting there, you know where that house is, right? So, like that, if you are able to point to something which then points to you understanding, that is the four different ways of talking about it. But what we are going to do next in the next class is something called Arundhati Nyaya. Arundhati Nyaya means citing Arundhati. I don't know if all of you have done this, but when you get married, they typically take the bride out and they show a star, Arundhati star, right? And how do they show that? They basically show uh, because Arundhati is actually a very, very small star, very dim star in the Urshula Major. And the way you point it is you say, oh, look at the tree branch. Can you see the tree branch? And next to that, do you see that bright star? And then next to that bright star, do you see a slightly dimmer star? And then below that, you see the dim star. That is Arundhati, right? So that is what we call going from known to the unknown. So the known, the tree branch is very easily known. And then from there, you kind of go and you point to the right place. As an aside, Arundhati, the reason they show apparently is because Arundhati and Vashishta are twin stars. And this twin star is unique that both of them go around each other, right? I don't know how the ancients found all this, but that is why they show as soon as you get married the star, because in a marriage, both of you are equal and you are equal in stars. So that's an aside, but basically that's the form that we're going to use. We're going to start with what we know and then go towards the unknown. And what do we know? How are we going to do this? When we think of who we are, we think of the body, right? So we're going to start with that. We're going to say what is some three bodies that we know that are defined. It's called Shariratrayam. And then there are 5 sheets of body-mind complex called Kosha Panchakam, Panchakam meaning 5. And then Avastatriyam, which is the 3 states of experience, which we talked about briefly, like the waking state, dreaming state, and the deep sleep state. So these are the 3 topics that we will cover in the next few sessions. And then as we go deeper and deeper, we'll understand what Atma is. So that's today's discussion. So let me open it up for any questions, points of view.
Very fantastic, but
Really deep.
very complex, very deep.
Indeed.
So
We're
yeah,
only starting.
yeah. So I think in my mind, correlating all these things, is I'm just getting lost a bit. So I need to figure out a way so that I can create a tree of everything you have said. So I'm able to correlate. So I'm not able to do that right now.
Yeah. So actually, if you look at it today, what you need to understand today is bhakti, which is devotion, and we talked about the three types of devotion as well as three types of God, right? And then the second thing we talked about is what are the qualifications you need in order to go into Jnana Yoga. Those are the two main topics, and those are not very complex. The last part, which is talking about Atma and Nama Rupa and what is dependent existence versus independent existence, that's what we'll expand through the rest of the sessions, right? So don't get, the preview shouldn't scare you because the preview should excite you to say, hey, this sounds exciting, let me learn. So that was the intention of the preview, not to scare you.
No, it's very
Yeah, I like your promise, Sri, that we will understand how Atma works.
In a sense,
We,
it's sort of
we,
he called it faith.
see a small aside. I want to really compliment Manu for a fantastic summary that she done. It
Thank
is
you.
amazing. So Manu, it is a superb way you have summarized all Sri's Gyan into fantastic 5 minutes of it. So compliments
Yeah,
to you.
absolutely. Yeah, chose the right person.
Yeah.
About
Great.
Bhakti, I have a question about Bhakti because right from childhood, I mean, my house was next to a temple, and maybe in a very, I don't know, crude form of Bhakti, not that Jnana Bhakti, just the Bhakti, that devotion. You recite God's name, and you will be able to once achieve Him, or आप भगवान को पा लेंगे. I mean, just by reciting His name. Does that mean there is no truth in that? Bhakti is not that?
So as I said, it is according to Adi Shankara, the only way for you to attain is through
Sorry, Shri, it's very difficult to hear. Can everybody mute yourself, please?
I think Meena. Okay. So as I said, there are examples of people who seem to have realized God by just devotion, right? But Adi Shankara says the only way, and this is Advaita philosophy, right? The only way for you to attain the true moksha is through knowledge. Everything else is impermanent, right? Unless you realize who you are truly, and you understand you and Brahman are the same, that is the best, that is the ultimate way for you to get moksha. It's like if devotion can take you somewhere, you will feel very peaceful, but that's not going to help you. You're going to be reborn. You have to go through that cycle, and we'll talk about the whole karma and what happens to you in the as we go along. But that is Advaita philosophy, right? I'm not. There are schools of thought, as I said, which says devotion is good. You can do it. And if you take Adi Shankara, I mean, he has written so many devotional slokas, right? The Lalita Sahasranamam and Saundri Lahari and Bhajagovindam, all these are written by him. And so it's not like he was bereft of devotion. He was brimming with devotion. But his point was, unless you understand, you will not get moksha. That is his philosophy.
Sri, I think that was the non-dualistic thought, right? The philosophy of God being in you. So unless you know yourself and you have the knowledge, you will not know God. As opposed to dualistic, which is God is outside you. So it's a different school of thought completely.
Sri, what does Vedant say about the role of a Pandit or a Brahman as an interface between us and the God when we are pursuing the devotion mark, bhakti mark? Is there any words on that?
No, I'm not sure if there is any, but Brahmins are supposed to be teachers. So in that sense, they are the ones. So when you talk about Gurukula Vasam, right? When you go to Guru, the Guru typically is a Brahmin, and you go to his house to learn. It can be anybody, and in fact, the Janayu is supposed to establish you as a student, that you can start learning. And because the Brahmins' kids used to learn from the father, they used to get the Janayu much younger when they were young, because they can stay at home and learn. The others had to wait till some age before they get that ability to go to school. But that kind of diluted into Brahmins wearing it and nobody else wearing it. And in some sections they do wear it. But that's what it is, right? So Brahman's role was as a teacher or as a performer of rituals. That is the role that they had. So it's not like you have to go through that person to know. But if you when Adi Shankara, there's a story where a Chandala, a person who basically cremates body, etc., was coming along, and Adi Shankara said, "Move out of the way, I have to go." So that guy asked, "Do you want my body to move or my Atma to move?" Right? So then Adi Shankara fell at his feet. He said, "You have understood, what you are." And of course, Bhakti Marga, which came, which was a movement around the 11th century, they kind of said, "Oh, Chandala then became Shiva, and he fell at his feet because he was Shiva." But that's not that's an interpretation. But actually, the fact that he understood that I am not this body made him a person who has realized the self. So it has nothing to do with the varnas which we talked about.
Thank you. I also wanted to say thanks to Manu for a very apt summary, very nicely done, and for coining this new term called spiritual brownie points for Punya. Yeah, well done. Yes, what a nice catchphrase. Thank you.
Thank you. Actually, Shri Uncle, I have a question.
Yeah.
So, are Atma and Brahma equivalent? Right? If they are, then why don't we just call everything Brahma? Why do we have two
Yeah,
different
we
terms?
can actually. There is no difference. Atman and Brahman is the same. And we will see that, right? It's just that it is, and when we go deeper, you'll see it is like sun and a mirror shining sunlight, right? We are like those small mirrors. The consciousness is the sun, and consciousness pervades through everything, but we are simply reflecting that, right? It's the same light. So if the sun goes away, the Atma goes away. So it's somewhat like that, right? So, but actually they are equivalent. There is no, so the same statement that I projected, which was, Atma Satyam and everything else is Mithya. The same thing is said Brahman Satyam and Jagat Mithya. So it's the same.
Yeah, thanks.
Subi, you're on mute, Subi.
Just an interesting, you mentioned about Adi Shankaracharya and about Shiva. So we had the chance, I shared those photos with you, to go to the Adi Shankaracharya Uttarakhand. And he had set up a Shiva temple in particular. Yeah. So we went into that, very ancient. There is a Shivling there. I kind of see the connection now.
Yeah. So he basically every month he planted a lingam in all four corners of India.
So Shri, I mean, after knowing this, again, I mean, this is knowledge, but you said that you still need a guru. So where do you find these gurus? I mean, I can see a guru in you, but
no, I think, see, we all find some source of knowing, and like Subi said in the first class or something, that the guru finds the shishya. The shishya doesn't find the guru, right? somewhere you'll find it, when you are eager to know, the jignasha, which is the the need to know comes, you will find somebody, right? And the trigger comes through some conversations like this, right, where we are having a conversation about it, and you say, okay, this sounds interesting, I need to know more, and it opens up your mind. Then you start seeking, and that's how you find it, hopefully.
What is ego then?
Yeah. What is
Ego.
ego? Ego is your ahankar, which is a sense of I that you have. So when we talk about mind and intellect, and ahankar is kind of considered one more element. When we talk about the panchakoshas, and we'll talk about that, we'll figure out what that is. Basically, there is a mind and there is a intellect, and it simulates an I for you. So in modern philosophy, I mean, consciousness is a very hard problem, right? It's defined as a hard problem. Nobody in science has still defined what consciousness is. But if there's a philosopher called Daniel Dennett who wrote a book called Consciousness Explained. In that book, he says, if you take an amoeba lets some things in and stops some things from coming in, right? So the skin of the boundary of the amoeba, it's a single-celled organism. So he says there is a concept of I in that amoeba because it's letting some things in and not letting some things out. So his philosophy is that as you get more and more sophisticated, that sense of I becomes more and more sophisticated. And that's what we feel as ego, right? But that's the intellectual ego. That's not the I. When we talk about self-knowledge, we are talking about Atma, which is different from ego. Ego is an intellectualization of I. In a sense, it is a kind of, it is required for you to look at yourself as one whole thing for you to survive. It's a survival thing, right? If you don't see it that way, you will not survive. But you are a collection, you're a bag of 5 trillion cells, which is put together. And some cells die today, like your nails grow, you cut it off, your hairs grow. I mean, mine doesn't, but that happens, right? Cells die and go. So so you're a single organism is a kind of concept that you have. It's not really, may not be true.
Sri, this is a slight divergence from the Hindu perspective. I'm thinking about maybe a Christian perspective vis-a-vis the Hindu perspective. Do you think they tend to emphasize the karma yoga, as in do service to others in order to achieve God? Or I'm just wondering whether you have any views on that.
Yeah. So if you actually read any religious, any like Jesus or Buddha or any of them, the basic principles will remain same. They have similar paradoxes. Like Jesus says, if you want to, those who try to save themselves will perish, and those who give up their life for me will survive. It's a contradiction. It's a paradox, right? He's saying those who don't try to save themselves will die, and those who die will save themselves. So the language that they use and the kind of, if you really go deep into the philosophy, it is not very different. It is the implementation of it and the rituals around it that differs. Is my opinion, right? Of course, if you ask a staunch theologian, he may say, no, you are talking bullshit. It's something else, right? I don't know. But if you really read some of those statements, you kind of realize that what they're talking about is not very different.
Thank you. Yeah.
Shri, I have a request. If you could delve deeper into like something which stood out for me was when you were talking about the Diksha today, and the So a lot of, at least for me, I mean, the first arrow, I think we.
Sorry, is it only me or?
No, we lost Pam.
Yeah. Okay, maybe she'll come back.
Yes,
Any other
Sri, on
question?
a related issue, would it be possible for you to share at some point in time in future the underlying meaning or rationale? I'm not sure what the word to use. What is the bhav underlying various expressions of being a Hindu? Because we tend to become a little more ritualistic, and we do the rituals like pranam and bowing, and so what is the bhav underlying that, and
Yeah.
if you can cover that at some point in time in the future, then
Yeah.
that will make it a lot of what we do so much contemporary.
Yeah.
Thank you.
No, but if you really look at it, if you take Hinduism, our attitude toward everything is reverential. Everything. You can take your pen or your book or even money, right? Certain religions consider that as evil. In Hinduism, it's Lakshmi, right? So you have to pray to money also. So everything is looked at it very reverentially. What does that show? That shows that everything is Brahman, right? And so some of these things are built into our system that it becomes easy for us to kind of intuitively understand some of these. So I'm not an expert on all the rituals, etc. But some of these attitudes that we build from childhood, people tell you, don't stamp that, don't, that's God, Bhagwan, you need to do this. That's kind of gives you that attitude to say everything is Brahman, nothing other than Brahman. Nothing exists without. So it's all Nama Rupa, right? That's what we learned today. So the substance is Brahman. Sorry, Pamela, you're back. You want to ask the question?
Yeah, my laptop, the battery just died. Yeah, so I was just going to request you if you could go into the Diksha a little bit more, because the first arrow, I think we all get it from all around us. It's the second arrow that which is where we need to have that mind control, and I'd just like you to delve deeper into it somehow, if it's possible.
Okay.
Maybe just 5 minutes, 5 or 7 minutes more in the next class.
Okay. Okay. Any other questions? Otherwise, we can call it a day. So one warning, as I said, right, when we go through these Sharira Trayam, Panchakoshakam, and so Sharira Trayam very simply is 3 levels of body. The Stula Shariram, which is the body that we all see, like I can see your body, you can see my body. And then I feel a body inside me that is called Sukshma Shariram, which is, if I feel a pain, nobody else can see that pain. I can see it, right? So that's the inner body. And then there's Karna Shariram, which is the causal body, which is like the seed from which the plant grows, right? So, and then the Panchakoshakams is like the body mind layers, which talks about Annamaya Kosha, which is food creates body, Annamaya Kosha. Then there is, you go deeper and deeper till you reach the Atma. So I don't want to confuse more. I'll keep the terminologies, but these are things that we're going to cover in the next few days. So it's going to be a little bit more, intense, and then we'll talk about self in a more intuitive manner. Okay.
And then we're all going to get liberated, Sri, in the end. Right?
Thank you, Sri, for your competence and compassion.
Thank you.
Thank you for your gift of
Thank
speech.
you. Bye.
Thanks a lot, Sri.
Thanks.
Sri,
Thank you.
Bye-bye, everybody.
Okay.
Thank you.